I want to start off just with a little bit of a question that I myself have, and I'm jumping the queue for a particular reason. Hopefully Mark Tyndall and Andrea Serrata are not going to unfriend me on Facebook after I ask this question. But there is a tendency to talk about policymakers and politicians needing to open the door for safe supply prescribing. There is a number of barriers that have been identified by Dr. Serrata. And here in British Columbia, when the provincial government announced safe supply, even though the province stepped out of the way, what we actually ended up seeing was a lot of physician gatekeeping in prescribing, and access to safe supply has gone down over time because of things like addiction medicine requirements for urine drug screening, because of concerns or ghost stories about diversion of hydromorphone. And yes, capacity is an issue, but that doesn't mean we can't help some people. Yes, we need a public health approach, but that doesn't mean we can't do something right now. Yes, it's not the right drugs. That's why we need to invest in fentanyl products and injectable diacetylmorphine. But the right here, right now, there still is more that can be done. So can you please speak to where does physician gatekeeping come from, and what needs to change within the constructs of addiction medicine so that more doctors are willing to do this work?
Well, I can start off. I can give Andrea the floor in a second, but I know from my personal experience, it's very hard to find doctors who will prescribe to the MySafe machine. There's one other one that has, but it's up to me to do it. There's you could break doctors into two groups. The vast majority who want nothing to do with addiction medicine or people with drug use and will not have anything to do with it in their practice, and really refuse to cave into arguments that say, well, you treat all diabetes, why wouldn't you treat addiction? And people will tell you they don't feel capable to do it, but really they just don't want to be bothered with it. And then the addiction doctors who have a long history of trying to get people to stop drugs, and their focus is on methadone and Suboxone treatment, which we have to remind people is really abstinence-based treatment. We don't like these drugs you're using, so we'll put you in this program with these drugs that don't do anything like the drugs that you're taking, but maybe, will obviously take the edge off it and things. So, and so most addiction doctors are not embracing the idea that they should be giving these drugs to people. So it really leaves a very few physicians who feel that they actually want to do it, understand to do it, and really, really support the idea. Most doctors would feel much more comfortable putting people in Suboxone and methadone programs.
Yeah, I agree with everything Mark has to say. I would love it if this community could figure out how to take me out of this role and put me out of business, right? I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I don't think doctors should be a gatekeeper. We're put here in this role because that's the only way we can currently get the drugs out to people, right? I think as a group, we need to figure out how to actually take people like me completely out of the equation. I also agree with Mark. I think most standard addiction treatment is abstinence-based, right? And so rightly or wrongly, that's how docs are educated, even up until today. Like, I know I give the only 1 hour of harm reduction lecturing at Western Medical School right now. So people, I think, just don't know. And I think most docs are, bred and born in an environment that, again, endorses the war on drugs and kind of that skewed morality. I think we just need to get out of our way and get out of the way of people who use drugs, right? So I'm not, and I think other safer supply prescribers like me, we're not in the business of telling people what to do. We're not in the business of trying to control people. We're not in the business of trying to monitor and surveil people. I tell my patients, I'm here to make your drug use healthier and safer, and whatever that looks like for you. So I think that's the big mind shift that we have to try and instill both, in addiction docs and new graduating docs too.
Great answers. Please still be my friend. Garth, did you have a question? I see that you're on video and you're unmuted.
I was just going to say, I agree with what Andrea and Mark said. Getting out of the medical cage is really important. That's why drug users in Vancouver have been proposing a heroin co-op clinic, or sort of like a heroin co-op, like where people could just access pharmaceutical grade heroin by being a member of the co-op, and there wouldn't be a idea of trying to change the behavior of someone. You know, what like with medical nudges and that, you could just come and get it. And so we've developed a paper on it in 2019, and sort of landed like a lead balloon with government, and we're working on another kick at it right now. But it is a different approach, and it would be what we would really want from government is to just agree not to send in the cops. You know, that's about it.
Great. There's one more question from the chat, and I invite anybody else if there are additional questions. But this question is I'm going to direct it towards Chanel, I believe, and it was about the efficacy or perceived efficacy of drug testing, and how people can make use of that, or if they find that to be helpful, and what your thoughts are, given that we know how toxic the drug supply is right now. Are you seeing being used? Do you see value in it at this point in time?
Absolutely. I would agree that there is value in drug checking, and that it is embedded into some SCSs already across the country. Unfortunately, here, the reality is that the illicit market is absolutely totally tainted with fentanyl, and that might actually be something that's welcomed. But the reality is, for folks who might be using stimulants that are adulterated and are cut with fentanyl, that is a huge risk, especially because of tolerance, right? So if folks aren't knowing what they're taking, huge problem. So yes, absolutely benefits to drug checking. But the reality for us here is, if people know that they're using fentanyl, and we don't have the ability to replace the drugs that they're checking with an unadulterated, like a regulated form of fentanyl that comes from the street, so like a prescription grade pharmaceutical grade of fentanyl to replace for folks, the reality is, are people going to just throw their drugs in the garbage that potentially, you know, that they've had to procure money for and secure those drugs? For me here, I don't see very many community members that would be willing to just kind of throw their drugs in the garbage and kind of start from scratch, because the reality is for us that everything is contaminated with fentanyl. So absolutely benefits to drug checking, and it should be embedded in all supervised consumption sites across the country, and should be readily available for even people who are going to be using at home. But unless we have something that we can replace the drugs that we're then, you know, telling people to not use, I don't see how that is, you know, beneficial in the long run for the community if we don't have something to replace it with.
Thank you so much, Chanel. And if I'm not mistaken, we have concluded with as much time as we have at this point in time. And so I want to thank every one of you for joining us today. I want to thank you for all of the work that you do. And I'm going to hand this back over to Richard Elliott and Elder Valerie Nicholson for closing.